if he would lead us in prayer today. Are you hearing me, John? Okay, thank you. And we'll ask David Swafford if he would do the Pledge of Allegiance, lead us in that today. So at this point in time, John, would you go ahead?
Lord God in heaven, we thank you for your purity, your grace and justice, and the way that you teach us through your word, through creation, and experience with each other. Lord, we're grateful for your faithfulness to us, that if we live according to your ways, that we'll be blessed and it will be a blessing to others. Thank you for the way this organization fits into your plan and into your kingdom. Thank you now for this food. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you very much. And again, we are now videoing or taping, whatever you want to call it, high-tech digitalizing or something of that nature.
Recording.
Thank you. Recording our programs, and they will be up on our website. Our website is oklahomacpac.com. And the past two meetings that we were here, one with U.S. Congressman James Bridenstine is up, and also the week before we had State Representative Randy McDaniel talking about probably what will be the number one issue at the Capitol this year, or one of the high priority issues at the Capitol this year, and that will be dealing with our badly underfunded retirement funds in the state of Oklahoma. So you can log on to those, and they're archived, and you can go and you can view any of those at any time you want to at your own convenience. I will just say this, that I'll be putting out another email tonight. I hope you'll read it. This is going to be a very, very, very important year in my estimation for many reasons. And there are going to be a lot of efforts, particularly in this first 3 months, a lot of things going on in this first 3 months to get organized, up and going, and become an effective group of grassroots people that can affect the outcome. And I would like to encourage you to understand you can have a tremendous effect on the outcome of legislation, particularly in the state of Oklahoma. Do you understand our form of government, while it is technically called a republic, it is still a government it's a self-government. And if people, good people, don't get involved in self-government, then you have bad government. It's that simple. You must get involved. And so I'm going to encourage people, I'm going to leave you with this one thought on this. And a man I have no respect for was Vladimir Lenin. Lenin said something we need to pay attention to. He said an organized minority can always rule over a disorganized majority. And folks, the way to win this is for us to be an effective, organized minority. We're never ever going to be the majority. But throughout history, great things have always been accomplished by very small numbers of people. So please watch the email. It's going to kind of line out a little bit of what's going to happen over the next 3 months. There'll be a lot of opportunities, and I want to challenge everyone in here. You make a commitment to get at least one person who's not involved as a grassroots activist right now. Each of you, pick out one person. You may have to make a list of 10 and work on 10 to get one. I don't know how you want to do it. But make a commitment to get at least one person involved. And part of that involvement means the education process they need to go through, and then the many opportunities that they will have to help. So I just want to share that with you. Obviously, if you're not currently receiving the OCPAC email, we have a sign-up sheet on the back, and I urge you to put your name on that. And then as of December 31st, if you were not having your checking account drafted, your membership expired last year, and it is time to renew your dues. And we have membership forms on the back table. If we run out of them today, I have a secondary membership form here. And we've got to get these filled out, or else Scott Pruitt will be coming with his handcuffs and put me in prison. And I don't want to do that. So please help with that. Okay, at this point in time, we're going to go ahead and turn this over, unless someone has an announcement that I'm unaware of at this time. Okay, Jerome.
Charlie, tomorrow night at the Draper Park Christian Church, pardon me, if you would like to attend something called the Truth Project, I'm going to be facilitating that project tomorrow night at 7 p.m., 1900 for military talkers, at 8600 South Walker in Oklahoma City, south of 74th Street on the east side, Draper Park Christian Church.
Are you just now starting this?
Just starting.
Okay, number one starts tomorrow night. And I can't tell you how valuable the information from the Truth Project is. It's 13 hours. You're starting it tomorrow night? Yes, go ahead.
This lady wants to know what the Truth Project is.
Okay.
It's a Christian world.
Let me, because I have the mic. And by the way, we have a mic over here. When we get to Q&A time, you're going to need to walk over here and ask your question from the mic. And the purpose and the reason for that is we're recording this, and we want the people viewing this to be able to see, or excuse me, to hear what's being said. The Truth Project, the presenter in that is Dr. Dale Tackett, and he was a professor at the Geneva Seminary in Colorado Springs. A lot of employees from Focus on the Family in Colorado Springs were taking his classes, and they were so impressed with the information that they went to Dobson back, this is 10, 12 years ago, when he was still the leader of Focus on the Family, and they said, this stuff is, this is dynamite. We've got to figure out a way to get this out to a broader audience. So Dobson viewed it, and he agreed, and the Focus on the Family, they used all their production capabilities, which are tremendous, to produce this 13-hour DVD series. The first 4 hours basically are laying a foundation, a really good understanding of Christianity on the one hand, and on top of that, it's the challenge, the greatest challenge we have, spiritual challenge today, is this conflict between situational ethics, moral relativism, the end justifies the means, versus God's absolute truth. That's the biggest, and the church itself is full of the thoughts of moral relativism and situational ethics. And yet we have a God that created everything, created us and all that's in it, and powerful, unbelievably God. A God that has an ability to either bless this nation or destroy this nation. And He operates on absolute truth. There are certain things that are just, that's the way it is. And so this is this tremendous battle. And He will show in these first 4 hours how you can trust the veracity of God's Word. And He'll prove it over and over. He'll take some of the greatest skeptics, the greatest arguments against the Word of God, and show you how the Word tears those down. It's a pretty amazing thing. Then from 5 on, every issue that we deal with at the state capitol in Washington, D.C., they address. They show that they show the biblical worldview and how it contrasts with the other worldviews. It's just done in a fabulous manner. So I cannot tell you how much I recommend it. They're starting tomorrow night with number 1, and then last Sunday they started with number 1 at Fairview Baptist Church in Edmond. And but what they're going to do is re-show number 1 at 4:45 this next Sunday, and then number 2 will be at 6 o'clock. And so they'll go through that, and they have some discussion. I don't know if you do discussion or not also. So here's 2 places it's going on. I urge you, if you've not seen it, go for it, and because it's really that valuable. Okay.
Where's the location again tomorrow?
Tomorrow, location, tell them again. 70, what?
It's at 8600 South Walker in Oklahoma City. South of 240 on the east side of Walker.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and get on with our meeting now. And as I said in the email, I met Linda Murphy a number of years ago when she was on the governor's committee to oversee, or excuse me, to evaluate either school to work, or perhaps it was outcomes-based education. I don't remember which one it was, school to work. And there was a citizens committee of about 25, and that committee was just about divided in half. And they were meeting at East Central University, I believe, down in Ada. And we needed some attention for that thing, so a group of us went down there with picket signs. And we got to that meeting, and man, you didn't need picket signs. The fireworks inside that meeting were something else. And unfortunately, one of the good guys that had been appointed by Keating, that was opposite side of the professionals, he rode down the head of the VOTEC system, and he flipped on everybody that day, and they lost their votes that day. But I met Linda, and I was so impressed with how she handled herself, and particularly with the chairman of that committee. And I've gotten to know her from that time forward. I can tell you, she knows where the bodies are buried. She understands the politics of things, and she really understands education. She's a former teacher. She's worked in State Department of Education and has run for State Superintendent of Schools twice. And maybe today, in the Q&A time, maybe we'll ask her if she's planning on running again. And if you are, you can announce right now, Linda. And if you aren't, please don't tell me I'm not going to. Play me along for a while or something like that as you're considering that. Anyway, please welcome Linda Murphy. Linda.
Well, I appreciate everyone coming today to listen and discuss education in Oklahoma. As we all know, we're in a new season of education reform. Unfortunately, I'm hearing many people call it education deform because we're on the wrong track again. We have a very top-down heavy program being imposed through, this time, not the federal government directly, indirectly many hooks, many grant monies, many regulations in various federal legislation they're trying to tie into what is called Common Core. But this time it's coming through the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers, which our state superintendent belongs to. In addition, we have corporations and foundations who have joined forces and been invited to the table. They have contributed millions, probably at this point billions of dollars to the process of reforming education. I've just written a piece in the Okie Blaze online, which is a newspaper with some information that I've been able to put out there every other week for a while. And in the Oklahoma Constitution as well, you can go there and read articles that I've written. Also in the Daily Oklahoman in July, I laid out a pretty much one-page overview of what Common Core is. I'll be talking about that, but first I'm going to say what I've just written in the Okie Blaze is about local control of education, the importance of local school boards, and it's really local control versus corporate control. That's where we are right now. Our State Superintendent Barisi has gone along with the agenda that was put into place under the Henry administration. Sandy Garrett as State Superintendent and Brad Henry as Governor signed the grant that got us started in the race to the top. That was for several $1 million for the state of Oklahoma, but we did not get the money. We did, however, get the stick. We got no carrot, but the stick. We complied with the regulations that were required, and our legislature put in place state law that causes us to have to do Common Core state standards in our schools. Now, if it were only standards and they were academic, I wouldn't even be here talking about this. But what we have instead is a philosophical shift in education. The shift is from equal opportunity to learn to equal outcomes being guaranteed with this system. In other words, every student, every grade will get through the same standards and master them, and when they graduate, they will all know the same basic things. Individuality is not in that equation. In the past and in our federal law, we say we believe, and we do as citizens, we believe that students have individual differences, but we need to guarantee that they all have an opportunity to learn, equal opportunity to learn. But equal outcomes are what we're getting now with Common Core. In addition to that, the lower grades are being required to do things that are developmentally way advanced for their age level. They're not able to write the length of sentence, the number of words, all of the requirements that are being made academically. Even if it's a good academic task, it would fit a second grader or a third grader, but not a kindergartner. And I've read through them. You can go online and find these at the State Department of Education website. Truth in American Education is a good website to look at to get a lot of information. Now, you don't even have to go there. If you want to Google Common Core, you're going to find pages and pages of references and articles written all over the country. Because what we have happening across the United States is opposition building from the left, from the right, from the middle, from citizens of every political persuasion, because they're finding out that this is really about controlling education. So as I've said to some, I could spend a lot of time talking about what is in the terrible curriculum that's being produced in some states and purchased in some states, who are states which are already putting the curriculum in place. But I'm not going to stay focused on that. You can look that up. But there are things that require students to change their view about the Constitution, about freedom, about the government and the structure of government, going from a Republican representative form of government to a democracy. All of these things that I know you're aware of within your group here, people that are well studied and well informed. But the curriculum is a problem. But the biggest problem is this: it's the control of education from the top down. We could have gotten an academic set of standards. Of course, that wasn't going to happen through the people that were at the table. But even if we had, do we want that all being controlled outside of our state? No. In the Wall Street Journal, Lou Gerstner, who was the former head CEO of IBM, under Bill Clinton, he put together the corporations that would support Clinton's agenda for education, which was outcomes-based education, Goals 2000, and School to Work. Charlie mentioned School to Work. We'll talk more about that. But under this agenda that Clinton had, Lou Gerstner was a corporate head, CEO of IBM, who brought other corporate heads together to support that agenda. He is now the head of Achieve. Achieve is the nonprofit organization that has written the Common Core state standards that we have right now in Oklahoma. They are sanctioned by the National Governors Association and the Chief State School Officers, who copyrighted the standards. The standards say they can only be 15% added to, and we do not have control of changing it. We can add 15% more of our own standards. That's what it says in the agreements. So right now, that's where we are. And Lou Gerstner, who is now with Achieve, came out of the Clinton administration education reform efforts. He said in the Wall Street Journal that we need to eliminate local school boards. Now that is a radical, extreme idea for the state of Oklahoma. I do not believe that Republicans, Democrats, Independents, or a majority of any of the people in Oklahoma will ever agree to that. There are some who think, let's just get rid of public school. I've heard this, unfortunately. I have been hearing this from some. I don't know how many. It would be good to know, but I don't know. Let's get rid of public schools, and let's have a parental choice. Let's have charters and vouchers, and just let the public schools go down. That is not me. I do not agree with that. I've never agreed with that. In fact, I opposed vouchers when I ran before, because it's about sending money from the government into a system which gives some control. In that system, private school, Christian school, I did not agree with the voucher idea. Now we're at a place where we have corporate charters. I'm not against every concept of charter schools. If it were parents and educators working together, and there was local community involvement in a charter school, I'm not opposed to that. But what is happening around the United States is charter schools mainly are predominantly being pushed and controlled and taken over for profit by corporations. Corporations that profit from public money, and then guess what? No elected local school board, none. That loses local control. Now, in the big cities, if we have such inner city problems and people want to go with a model like that, that's not something that, if that's what the people of the cities want. But we've got a lot of rural Oklahoma out across the state, people that I talk with and see and know that say, the parental choice we want is our local public school. We want it to be funded, and we want it to have academic standards and have local control of it. So that's where I am. That's where I was in '94. You can go back and look at the newspaper articles. I haven't changed. I've been there all along. So these are things that are involved. The Common Core state standards are not just standards because we have high stakes testing. You've heard this term. High stakes meaning something is going to happen as a consequence if this test is not passed. So the Common Core state standards are aligning, actually, the fact is the test will drive even the standards because the people in control of the test are also in control of the standards. And if they want to change items on the test, the standards could be changed to align. The test will make the determination. And we haven't yet got that in the state of Oklahoma. We haven't had that test administered. It will be in the spring. Some field testing will be done. There's a company called Measured Progress that was contracted through Janet Barisi's direction, and the state school board received a recommendation to approve it. They did not get to look at all of the companies that bid and make decisions about the best company, the best philosophy in the items, etc. They were given a recommendation, and what they got to do, the state school board got to vote up or down. They voted for it, recommended by the state superintendent, and I don't like that process, obviously. I believe that our state school board should have full packets of information. They don't have to have the company name, but they can have the information about the company and their bid to know what the choices would be, and if they didn't like those choices, to make another choice. But when we pulled out, Janet Barisi in July pulled Oklahoma out officially and announced that she was not going to participate for the state of Oklahoma in the testing for Common Core through PARC, which is Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for Career and College and Careers. That consortium of states, PARC, is what Jeb Bush had recommended and is a part of out of Florida, and it's one of two groups in the United States developing the Common Core tests. If you do some research and look into it, you will find that Measured Progress says right up front that they work with PARC. They work with the other group. So what we have is Measured Progress is producing the tests. The items have already been developed. The system has already been developed through PARC. So staying in PARC was irrelevant. In it or out, that part of the work had already been done. Here's another part of the picture. The federal government in April said through the Education Week article, it was stated there, I don't know if they'd announced it earlier, but in April, Education Week said that the Federal Department of Education will review and revise the testing that PARC produces. Now that is federal control.
That's right.
That is federal control. We've got a lot of tentacles all over the place with this, and more time than you want to sit in the chair and more time than you want to listen to me talking about the details. I'm going to give you the overview, and if you have a question, we'll answer that. But the PARC assessments are really being worked with through Measured Progress. It's $34.45 million. That's a 5-year contract, but in the state of Oklahoma, every year it must be renewed, even though it's a 5-year contract. So I assume that put the whole package together for 5 years with a price and everything. That's a lot of money. We need to do testing that is academically focused, and we need academic standards in the first place, standards that teachers across the state of Oklahoma who have experience and who have produced successful results look at and agree with. I do not think every teacher in this classroom is a great teacher. I do not think every doctor in an office is a great doctor. I do not think every lawyer is a great lawyer. But we've had too much, I will just call it demonization or condemning of teachers as a whole to get some things done, saying teachers aren't teaching. Janet Barisi, when I spoke at 2nd Congressional District meeting in McAllister in November, Janet Barisi said teachers tell her they don't know how to teach reading. Really? I've taught reading. I know hundreds, thousands of people in this state who have taught reading successfully. Now that is just a way of politically going ahead to do what you need to do to fix a problem you're creating by what you say. We need to be very careful that we support the teachers that are in the classroom, that are doing a good job, and we need to have enough wisdom to sort out where the problems are, and if some of them don't need to be there, we now have some authority to change that. So that's what we need to work on. We need to work on our academic standards and our testing to align with that and get a company that we have some control over. If you remember last year, we had computers break down all over the state. Hours and hours of students sitting and waiting, having to start, restart, another day, and all of that failure was then basically shifted in Barisi's speech over to the schools who are not prepared technically. Now, did she have a clue before she ordered that testing what the requirements were and to find out if those schools were or were not technically ready? There are many questions that can come up right there. But another thing that really stands out is there was no money reimbursement, just more services provided now by McGraw-Hill, who produced those tests. They and Pearson Corporation, McGraw-Hill and Pearson Corporation, are big multinational conglomerates. They're not just education, they're in business, they're in a number of areas. They have many subsidiaries. There is a real interest in gathering student data through testing. The state longitudinal data system is set up and was set up in each state, I'm told, because of the federal money that states took for stimulus. You know, the idea of a state longitudinal data system, well, we want state government to be more efficient. There are things that could be done better, but when you look into it, you find a state longitudinal data system which is set up to feed in data on students in the public schools, K through 12, and that data will align with workplace information. Our Governor, Mary Fallon, and I've known Mary for 20 years, a little before I met Charlie, actually, and we were on the campaign trail together when she ran for Lieutenant Governor. When I served in Governor Keating's office, I was appointed by him as Secretary of Education after I got 49.5% of the vote statewide in 1994. In the governor's office, I knew Mary Fallon there. She was just down the corridor from us in the state capitol. Talked to her many times. She always agreed with everything I said about education at meetings, at Republican meetings across the state. This is well known by those who have been out there for any amount of time, you know, back to that time period. Unfortunately, at the National Governors Association, she is now the chairman of that national organization, and they brought forth the same agenda that Bill Clinton had produced there back in the 90s. He was the chairman of the National Governors Association. In 1995, Governor Keating sent me to the National Governors Association meeting as his education advisor. And while I was there, we were asked, persuaded, cajoled, wined and dined and, flattered. You know how that works? Doesn't work very well for those that keep their eyes open, but that's what they were doing, how important we were in determining the agenda in the governor's office, and this was a representative from a number of states, because we had just elected in 1994 across the nation a number of conservative governors. And that's who they brought in, the advisors to the governors, to get this education agenda moving forward that Clinton had produced. Well, I had just run statewide with 49.5% of the vote opposing the Clinton agenda for education. So I wasn't going to sit there and agree to the same agenda I had just run against. Governor Keating knew I wasn't going to agree with it, and he sent me to the meeting. So I was free to say what I did. At a point when they had brought in all of the national model people, Mark Tucker with the National Center for Education and the Economy, which Hillary Clinton served on the board, and that's what we're really looking at. If you've looked into the Mark Tucker letter to Hillary, it's 18 pages, lays out the economic and education plan for the United States. That's what we're still looking at now. That's what this is. And so as I sat there, I knew if I didn't say something, they're going to leave the meeting, the staff of the NGA will leave the meeting and say, we've agreed to this. You know, you're put in a position of having to disagree or you've agreed. So as we sat there, it was like hours after we'd had lots of breakout sessions and all. I looked up and I said, in the state of Oklahoma, I do not believe that Governor Keating will be agreeing to this agenda. The man across from me bolted out of his seat forward and said, why are you looking for a problem under every rock? Well, he was the Secretary of Education to Governor Jim Hunt. And if you do your Common Core research, you'll find Jim Hunt, the Hunt Institute, because he's been working on it all these years, just like Lou Gerstner, who is the head of Achieve and was with Clinton then. We have Virginia sitting next to me, the state of Virginia Secretary of Ed, agreed and said Governor Allen will not be doing this in Virginia. And New Hampshire, across from us, said, we're not doing this in New Hampshire. We say, don't tread on me. Or live free or die. I guess that was it instead. Whichever. It means the same thing, doesn't it? I was thrilled that there were three of us in agreement, at least. Well, that put an end to their pushing this down us, down our throat, sitting there being forced to disagree. And so that's where that was. But now we have Governor Fallon, who has been ill-advised to go along with this agenda in the name of economic development. She held up a brochure at the NGA meeting when she became chair in July this year, and you can find it online. It's called America Works. It's the initiative. I'll just cut to the chase and say that Janet Barisi in McAllister, when I spoke at the 2nd District meeting, and she spoke, and then we took questions, it was about a 2-hour meeting. I said that America Works is school to work. And a number of reporters have come to me and said, Linda, isn't this school to work? And I said, yes, this is school to work. It is. When I said that, of course, Janet Barisi was not pleased. And when she came to the microphone, she said, yes, Governor Fallon is now the chair of the NGA, and America Works is school to work. Thank you very much. We've got that on video, and that's exactly what it is. America Works says that we are aligning education with the needs of business. That's the goal. That's the focus. It says that we are developing a human capital pipeline. Really? With our children, they are capital. They are resources. They are to be managed and produced in such a way that they will come out with the skills that business requires, starting in kindergarten. If we were talking about VOTEC like we know VOTEC, that'd be fine. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about revamping K through 12 education. You have to read some of these writers, and it's all over their place, all over the place. Their words are very clear. David Coleman and a man named John Craman, who is now in our Student Information Office at the State Department of Education. John Craman sat on the board of the English Language Arts Standards Writing Group at Achieve, and he also sat on the Math Standards Writing Group at Achieve. John Cramen is over student information in our state capitol, in our State Department of Ed, hired by Janet Barisi. When I brought that up at the meeting, she said she couldn't let that go, that this is a very fine person and there's no conspiracy. Well, I didn't say there was, but if people plan to do something together, what do you call that? I don't know. You can choose the word. But he was at Achieve for 10 years, and he came to the State Department of Ed as this expert in Common Core, ELA, English Language Arts, and Math. But we are told repeatedly, unfortunately, by the governor and state superintendent, that this is a state-led initiative, that Common Core is developed by our state and led by our state. It just is not true. So there are many things we can talk about. I think I've given you probably enough to consider, and I'll be glad to take questions if you have some.
Okay. Let's try to go around the back if we can. You can go ahead this time. So try to go around the back and line up. You're first. You get to go.
The question I would put forth is, what price and what quality would your food be like if you had to shop at the supermarket, if you could only shop at the supermarket nearest your home? We need competition and accountability in our schools. It's a situation where, and we have it already in higher education, the voucher system. It's called the GI Bill. OBU, OSU, OSU, OCU, they exist side by side. It's not going to ruin the public school system. It's going to bring accountability and competition to education. And I'm here to say, I really believe the brick and mortar system is going to be as obsolete as the buggy whip before very long. There's a pretty good opinion piece in the paper this morning. Vouchers, any form of school choice is something we desperately need.
Right. Okay.
Well, let me just answer. As I said, inner cities, I'm not saying there's not a place where that is not applicable as far as a charter school is concerned. And we have charter schools now, and I'm not advocating shutting down the charter schools we have. But I'm saying we've got to open our eyes and see that there is a corporate, for-profit charter effort, not just effort, it's being done in a number of states, and that we do not want to lose the local control of education. That is something important to communities across the state.
My name is Jeanette. I've raised two daughters who are very high in economic circles in Oklahoma County. I have two grandchildren in school, and I will make an observation, then I'm going to ask you a question. It appears to me that since 1969, we have sought to equalize at the lowest common denominator in education. Broadening the base of not only the number of students per classroom, but the quality of education of the teachers we have teaching our children. And the reason I say that is I've maintained my children in a private school environment, and that's the basis on which they've excelled in business. They're 33 and 31. The question that I'm going to ask you is, you have pointed out the shortcomings of the system and where we stand on Common Core. You have yet to offer a solution, and I'd like to hear one.
Okay.
Something that we can all embrace. Thank you.
Sure. Yes, it's a matter of time, and I will just say, as far as a plan and what we need to do, we need local control, first of all. We have to get rid of this problem, because we're not going to have a choice to make a good plan to improve things, because this is taking over, and that's why I talk about it first and foremost. But we need to go back to the past document, the priority academic student skills, and improve them. We don't have to call it PASS, you know how they like to change names anyway, we can do that. But academic skills can be identified at each grade level. There are a number of states that have done this. We improved what we had at one point. We did this in the 90s. When we got the learner outcomes, there were 7,000 of them from the State Department of Education, and they had the OBE philosophy throughout. Those were eliminated. 100% of the Senate killed those learner outcomes because they were terrible. We got rid of those and started over. So I'm saying from schools, from local school boards, teachers, administrators, parents, we've had for years what is called the Comprehensive Local Education Plan Committee in schools. We can develop standards that come from that can come up to the top and be integrated into one document where we have a set of academic standards. And you're right about the limiting and the narrowness. That is planned, that's intentional. It is what they call closing the achievement gap. Social justice. We can talk about a lot of things that plug right in here. The philosophy of narrowing the curriculum and making sure that everyone gets the same thing and they all get it requires that it be less, because everyone can't get through a high standard. That's not going to happen. And even these social engineers know that. So we have to have academic standards that are set high, and if a child is not able to attain it, it should not hold back the rest of the class. We should have the opportunity to learn to the best of our individual ability. I worked in special education and wrote individualized education plans. And there were students that could only achieve at a certain level. I didn't predetermine that. I gave them every opportunity to achieve up to the top of their ability. And then I would raise the bar. You know, I had students that didn't want to work on such a high level, and I would say to them, do you want me to give you what you had last year? No? Well, then this is challenging. You know, you do that. You work to encourage them, but you know that individually there will be differences. And that's where we've had this problem of the narrowed curriculum. It's a political agenda behind it to equalize. Yes.
Thank you, Linda. My name is Jerome. Thank you for your fight against this monolithic collectivist scheme to control our education system.
Thank you.
Before my question, short statement. Bill Ayers, a long time ago, developed in Texas a thing called C-scope, I believe. I believe that's the acronym.
Correct.
Something similar to that. And his co-conspirators, they were pushing that. Texas didn't like it. They've now dumped it and got rid of it. But the same coterie of traitors have now gravitated to Common Core from the readings that I've had through and I forget where I've got it, but I've got a few sources of data. So therefore, it is a rotten scheme, and the same people have moved into Common Core with this corporate public-private partnership type scheme is really and truly what it's all about in actuality. So the basic premise of that tells you, and that was Bill Ayers. We don't have to read textbooks to find out who this guy was back in the 60s, you know what I mean? Okay, the question, ma'am. There is a lot of us here in Oklahoma who are thinking that 15% that you alluded to earlier, that if that could be enhanced or modified to 25%, that would give us liberty, freedom, constitutionalists to insert data for the teachers to put that into the school curriculum. Hopefully they would test on it. But that would be put in there to water down that miserable mess. Do you think that's a viable technique for attack?
The problem, and if we were stuck with it, of course that would be better than not being able to adjust it. But the problem is that's only a Band-Aid on the whole problem. The testing is controlling what teachers teach, their jobs, students graduating. It's the testing that's driving the system. So again, if those standards sat there and we could develop our own test and make sure it was academically focused, then we could work with the test and teachers could even tweak it in the classroom. And that's what's been happening. That's one reason teachers, some places, have not felt like Common Core was so bad, because they haven't yet been required to follow the regimented, rigid structure that's coming as the testing is brought into place. In fact, the testing itself is not just a test at the end of the year. The testing on their website, the Measured Progress, shows that they have interval tests, they have other tests in between the interval tests, and basically what they end up telling you is that a teacher needs to pull from the data bank items to integrate into their teaching daily. The testing drives the system. And the evaluation of the student is not just, it's not academic. It's how do they process? How do they think? What level do they belong on? That's the kind of assessment that we're getting. Behavioral, processing, not just can they get 2 + 2 is 4. If you haven't heard about the math, it's more process than it is calculation. In fact, if they calculate the right answer, write it down on the paper, they'll miss the question. They'll miss that one because they had to work it out in a process, a lengthy process. Well, in real life, we want quick automatic calculation, don't we? In the mind of the child, not on a calculator. We want them to use that too, but we want that skill to be in their own mind quickly and automatically.
My grandfather was in the first graduating class at Central Normal School, which is I'm not sure what it's called now, the school up in Edmond. UCL, okay. But he was a graduate in the first graduating class there and was a teacher in Oklahoma back a long time ago. I have a bunch of his textbooks and things that he used, and one of them was that I have is a first grade reader. I showed that about a year ago to a girl who I thought was a fairly bright fourth grader. She couldn't read it. Now, I really don't think back in 1910, the kids were smarter than kids are today. So we have a problem here.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Individually, there can be a child that has some kind of interference with the reading process, but in general, that is happening way too much. In Tulsa, we have 60% of the students read below grade level in the 4th grade. That's according to the Tulsa Public Schools themselves. That's not an outside evaluation. And the answer to that by Keith Ballard, Superintendent of Tulsa Schools, who did not support me, will not support me, and gets Gates money day and, week after week and month after month, millions for the Tulsa Public Schools to fix these problems. He said in the Tulsa World, when asked how does he work to improve this reading problem, he said he needs longer school days and more technology. Children who cannot read need people who care about them, sitting with them, reading with them, listening to them, correcting them as they read, directing them, encouraging them, giving the right level of academic challenge for their particular individual need. I've done it with hundreds and hundreds of children myself, and many people have done this. Many parents have done this.
2 more questions.
Linda, Bob Ballard.
Yes, hi.
You mentioned the idea of restoring local control, and essentially over choice of curriculum is the approach. What do you believe is the best strategy for actually getting there? What do we do step by step to actually achieve
Okay, good question. Local control right now is being taken through this Common Core standards and testing process. What will we decide on the local level? We won't decide the curriculum. We won't decide how to teach. We'll have to teach the way it needs to be taught to get them through the test. See, that drives the whole thing. So we need to stop this. There is a Senate Bill 1146, which has been filed, and there will be other bills filed, I understand, which stops the Common Core process in Oklahoma, in our state law. Now, we've still got a lot to do, and as we were discussing earlier, there has to be a plan to put back into place. When we stop that, we need academic standards brought back and put into place, and if there are any good ideas in the Common Core standards, of course, we could integrate that in. I'm not saying there's not one redeemable word in the whole plan. There can be some things depending on how it's done and whether it's appropriate for the child developmentally at that age. So, of course, that's the way a lot of things get done. There are some things that, get focused on. And we hear the word rigor all the time. Well, some of it's very rigorous, but it's rigorous with a narrow curriculum, and it's rigorous sometimes because it's not developmentally appropriate. So, at any rate, that's how we get local control. We stop this process we're in, and we get academic standards back in place, and we contract with a company that produces a test And I believe this, I believe the test that's given to our students to pass and fail, for schools to be graded on, and then this is a whole other issue, but teacher evaluation. We don't have time. That'll be another day, we'll talk about that, because some things cannot be evaluated that are very, very vital in the classroom. What I just said, let's just go rewind to what I just said about teaching reading. How do you measure all of that and see if a teacher's doing that? You can get the test score and you can measure that, and that's important. We need to look at that. In special education, I worked with psychometrists, and we had to have a battery of testing to make a determination that was fair and accurate about what to do for a child to improve. We didn't just look at IQ or academic performance, we looked at all of these things. And we saw how they performed on the work in the daily class. Observations are part of a good evaluation, and of course professional training for that is vital. And we're seeing Teachers America and some of these other organizations bringing teachers into the classroom that are not professionally trained, but guess what? That's a great idea for people that are just looking at saving money. They want to save money. They don't want the professionals making decisions about curriculum like I was trained to do and like I've done. And most good teachers in the state of Oklahoma know this. Yes.
Rayford Brown, Temple, Texas. I would recommend everybody, you have given a great nuts and bolts evaluation of Common Core. If you want to get the big picture of Common Core, I highly recommend the jbs.org DVD on Common Core. But I've come from Texas and dealing with C-scope, and the charter schools, they have been pushing 5-year contracts and no control, and a large number down there are the Harmony charter schools, and they're controlled by a Turkish muzzle.
Yes.
And they're bringing in foreign nationals, forcing kickbacks, and it's very corrupt. What is the status in Oklahoma?
Well, we have in Oklahoma some religiously focused schools that are not Christian, and these are the problems that some people have tried to deal with. I believe Sally Kern had a bill for some of the charter schools, not bringing in people from out of the country to teach, and some of these problems that go along with that. So individually, we need to look at each charter, and I'm not against, as I tried to say up front, I am not against a charter that is really locally teachers and parents working together to improve education. We need to leave room for that innovation. I agree with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Rachel just referred to that DVD. It's 70 minutes long, and it's back here on the table. Has a really, right next to the sign-up place, has a really pretty cover on it, and that's why it's so expensive. It's $1. Okay? And don't just get one, get 2 or 3, because you got neighbors that need to see this. And then in addition, as Linda mentioned early on, she has an article in the Oklahoma Constitution. It's on the last page. They're free. They're over here. The items on this table are free. Down there's recommended donation amount for that. Besides, the DVD is a very good magazine on Common Core, also put out by, or it's a reprint of the New American. So anyway, I do want to ask one question. If you could come back over here. And let's just think about what we're really talking about with local control. And I've been involved with school boards. I know what goes on. And too many times, the members of school boards are not particularly knowledgeable of the education process and what's necessary. So what they are is kind of figureheads or rubber stamps for what the superintendent tells them. If we were to really go to local control, something I really favor, and I really mean local control, we'd do away with all this testing, we'd do away with all this central planning, everything, and we'd leave it up to each school system. And if the parents of that school system didn't elect good school board members, and what I call a good school board member is an activist member, someone who actually finds out about what it takes to provide good education, and then they hire a professional superintendent who's responsible for hiring the principals and the teachers to deliver that. If they don't do that, and that school doesn't produce, and I'm going to tell you who the judges of the production are going to be, the parents, okay? If they don't do a good job, are we willing to allow that school district to exist and say, you know, folks, it's local. If you don't want anything better than this, then you're not going to get it. On the other hand, if they really produce good, that's good. That's good for everybody. What are your comments on that?
I hear what you're saying, and I agree, but as you said, we're not there where we have people educated well enough. It's a step back from top-down control to go to state standards and a state test that we control. I think incrementally we need to do this. I would not be opposed to that, but I don't think we're near there to be able to do something like that. Exactly.
Yeah.
And my hope in all of this is that we see the importance of education in the minds of our children, our own families, our communities, our state. We must have people educated. We must have people that care about those children that do have needs. People who say that we need alternative to help these children. We need to let the people who are doing that now keep teaching. And we need to support them and encourage that. And that is local control of education. There is no other way. I know it's a messy, sausage-making process. School board elections, sometimes people don't know anything about what they're doing. Sometimes one does, sometimes the whole group does. You've got a mixed bag there.
My point on self-government, if good people don't get involved, you don't have good government.
That's right.
All right?
Exactly. I agree. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Linda, I appreciate that very much. One of the things, we're going to try to get Joy Hoffmeyer here, and is it Hoffmeyer or Hoffmeister? Okay, Hoffmeister here. And then later on, we'll, once we know really who's going to run, you didn't tell us if you're running today or not. Did you want to tell us if you're going to run?
Well, I'll say something about it. Yes, I meant to say something about it. I will say this. I know I brought up some things here today, even among us here in this room, that we may have differences of views on. And one of those being the charter issue. I realize that a lot of people have heard the Milton Friedman philosophy of competition and free enterprise, and I absolutely agree with that. So I'm not against that even happening with charters that are locally involved. But I think we've got to be real careful because we've got state laws, and now with this Common Core and testing, the way it's set up, there are people in line ready to take over as schools are declared failures, with a system that we've already been told the students are going to be failing the tests. How does that work out? I don't know if you've heard that, but that's what's been said officially through the State Department of Ed in Oklahoma and in other states. So there's a lot more. Like I said, I could bore you to death.
So you may be thinking about
So I am thinking about running. I am considering it, and I realize that, I mean, no, I care about the issues. I care about education, but I know that I have to reach. I would run as a Republican. I ran as a Republican before. I was in Governor Keating's office. There are people that are even in the so-called establishment of the party a long time that know I'm not a right-wing nut, as they want to make, you know, the media wants to make all conservatives look. I have some folks that would support me from a wide base. However, there are a lot of issues going on, and there's a lot of confusion even in our conservative base. So as I work on this, I'm prepared to move forward to run for state superintendent of schools, but I have not announced. We have until April to file. I know I will not compete with hundreds of thousands of dollars on that level, but with grassroots support, I believe it can still be done, and that's what I'm looking at. Thank you.
Okay, Linda, thank you, appreciate it. Well, she didn't say yes, but she played me along and didn't say no, so I think that's a good thing. We're going to have Joy also, going to invite her. And, you know, we had Janet a while back. We've had Linda today. We'll give Joy an opportunity. And then once we kind of figure out who the candidates are really going to be, we'll try to have a forum with all three of them here if they all agree to that. And then we'll probably run it like each of them will have maybe 8 or 9 minutes to tell us anything they want, and maybe to draw the distinctions between themselves and the other candidates. And then maybe we'll have 2 minutes each for rebuttal, and then we'll turn it loose to the sharks on that. That's you all, and we'll see what we come out with on that. In addition to that, next week we're going to have a controversial speaker here. It'll be Oklahoma City Councilman Ed Shadid. If you followed the news and things, you know how the Oklahoman has gone after him, and you know that right now he is proposing an initiative petition dealing with the convention center and ending the MAPS 3 sales tax early. Let me just say this, I'm not endorsing Ed Shadid at all. And I mean, his problems have been all over they're all aired out, okay? 9 years he's been in recovery, all right? But he's got some things to say about the convention center that need to be heard, and not through the filter of the Oklahoman. And so I want to urge you to come. This is going to be very interesting, I promise you. Then the week after that, we'll have U.S. Congressman James Langford here. And a little bit of that's a matter of being called on the carpet. And a little bit of that is a matter of James has always been willing to come and speak and defend the positions that he's taking. Whether you agree with them or not, that's just James, and I appreciate him for that. So that'll be the next couple of weeks. They should be really good meetings, very interesting meetings. I hope you'll come to those. And again, if you have not, oh yes, also, help me with her name, I forgot. Carolyn McClarty will be speaking at the Logan County Republican meeting this coming Saturday in Guthrie. That's at 9 a.m. at the American Legion building. Carolyn is actually the person that's responsible for getting the anti-Agenda 21 embedded in the National Republican Party platform. And I believe she's also responsible for getting the anti-Common Core positions embedded in the national platform. I will tell you this, approximately 4 weeks ago, on a Wednesday, she had what was supposed to be an hour with Governor Mary Fallin regarding Common Core. It turned into about I think about an 85-minute session. And I would say at that point in time, since Mary's been governor, it's probably the first time that Mary has heard any information about Common Core that wasn't filtered through her handlers, through her gatekeepers, through the real governor. Okay? Read my next email about the real governor. Well, the real governor of Oklahoma stand up? It sure isn't Mary Fallin. Mary Fallin is the figurehead. Okay? All right, folks, thank you so much for coming. Be sure to access the information back here. We'll look forward to seeing you next month. It'll be on our website.